She watched the guests reveling and smiled with only her lips. How could she genuinely feel joy when it had only been 8 days since her husband's death? But that was her fate, her own choice, to marry immediately before she herself was betrayed to death by assassins. Queen Isabella locked her heart away. For a while, she needed to forget her feelings. Isabella was born in the early 12th century in Jerusalem, the daughter of King Amalric I and Byzantine Princess Maria Komnene. In fact, Isabella's veins flowed with Armenian, Greek, and French blood. At her father's court, everyone spoke French fluently. This was the language her older half-siblings, Baudouin and Sibylla, preferred as well. When her father died and power passed to her older brother, Isabella was taken away from Jerusalem. Her mother remarried, and the princess was raised in her stepfather's palace. However, neither Baudouin nor Sibylla objected to spending time with their younger sister, so Isabella often visited them. The girl was certainly aware of her mother's strained relationship with her family. The Byzantine woman dreamed of placing Isabella on the throne. Everyone understood that Baudouin was ill, and Sibylla was frivolous. But here was a smart, attentive, promising princess from a line of emperors. At her brother King Baudouin IV's insistence, Isabella was married at the age of 8 to Onfroy de Touraine, a lord and wealthy man. Of course, they could have waited until Isabella came of age, but the king of Jerusalem was in a hurry. Maria Komnene and her second husband had begun to weave very open plots, and the girl needed to be removed from their influence as soon as possible. To limit the princess's interactions with her family, her mother-in-law kept a close watch on her. Wherever Isabella went, wherever she stopped, Onfroy's mother followed her relentlessly. It reached extremes. Every morning, the princess's room was searched. What if she had written to her mother during the night or secretly received a message from her? It was humiliating and cruel, but Isabella had to endure it. To distract herself from her almost prison-like existence in her husband's house, she tried to occupy her mind, reading, studying music with her teachers. Sickly King Baudouin soon passed away. The question of succession remained open. The two sisters, Sibylla and Isabella, had equal rights, but Sibylla was older and had already become a mother. Therefore, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, shortly after the king's funeral, the coronation ceremony for Baudouin V, Sibylla's son, took place. The child king lived for only a year, and his mother, still in mourning, rushed to be crowned alongside her husband. Guy de Lusignan was not well liked. He was a social climber with a terrible temperament and utterly incapable of ruling. Isabella's family plotted a coup, inspired by the Byzantine Maria Komnene. The plan was straightforward. Isabella's husband needed to assert his claim to the throne, and Maria's supporters would rally behind him. There were enough armed forces to facilitate a swift and effective change of power. However, Onfroy lost his nerve. The 20-year-old count lacked both common sense and courage, but time quickly set everything in motion. Saladin attacked the Kingdom of Jerusalem, winning one victory after another. Against this backdrop, Guy de Lusignan appeared weak, and then Sibylla died from an epidemic. Now, Guy could no longer call himself king, though he continued to do so. All rights belonged to Isabella. It was at this moment that the young princess made her voice heard loud and clear. She informed her supporters of her intention to divorce the apathetic, dull, and indecisive Onfroy. Having turned 18 and received the royal crown, she wanted a strong warrior by her side, not a cowardly boy. To make matters worse, Onfroy was also supporting Guy. A contender was found by Isabella's family, the ever-restless Maria Komnene. His name was Conrad of Montferrat, a well-educated, brave, and attractive man. The age difference between the bride and groom was 27 years, but Isabella was satisfied. She had heard much about Conrad's exploits. He was a celebrated warrior. The groom was also taken with the bride. Historians recorded that Isabella of Jerusalem had grown into a beauty. Slender and graceful, with large dark eyes, the queen could have been the dream of any knight. Her raven black hair was thick and glossy, styled in an elaborate fashion. Golden jewelry sparkled against her milky white skin. She was a dazzling young woman. However, it would take a few more years before Conrad and Isabella were recognized as the rulers of Jerusalem. Guy de Lusignan was unwilling to concede, hoping for support from Richard the Lionheart. Interestingly, Isabella found an ally in her cause in Richard's main rival, the King of France, Philip II Augustus. In the end, the coronation was set to take place. As Queen Isabella prepared for the grand dinner celebrating this momentous occasion, she became so engrossed in selecting her outfits and jewelry that she lost track of time. Meanwhile, aboard Conrad, waiting for his wife, decided to invite Bishop Philip of Beauvais to dinner and left the royal palace unguarded and without weapons. This turned out to be a fatal mistake. The King of Jerusalem was stopped by two beggars. Thinking they were asking for alms, Conrad reached for his purse, only to be mortally wounded in the stomach. Disguised assassins had carried out the attack. Queen Isabella fainted upon hearing the news of her husband's death. She was pregnant. Dressed in black, she spent the next 2 days by Conrad's body until she was informed of the arrival of Henry of Champagne. This night, a relative of the kings of England and France essentially brought her an ultimatum from Richard the Lionheart. Either Isabella marries him, or no one could guarantee her safety. A young woman, a widow without an heir, in a rebellious and brutal world, would surely become the next victim of assassins. Thus, on the 8th day after Conrad of Montferrat's death, Isabella entered into marriage once again. A forced wedding could hardly bring joy to Isabella. Soon after, she gave birth to a daughter named Maria from Conrad. Over the next few years, she became a mother 3 more times. Henry of Champagne dutifully fulfilled his marital obligations. But the queen waited. One day, Henry leaned against a balcony railing that was either rotting or had been tampered with, and he fell to his death. By this time, it seemed that Isabella had already found a new love, because shortly after the death of her 3rd husband, the Queen of Jerusalem married once more. Her new co-ruler was Amalric of Cyprus. The wedding took place in Acre. In this marriage, Isabella also had 3 children, and it appeared she was happier with Amalric than she had been with Henry of Champagne. Isabella and her 4th husband became victims of an unfortunate accident. They both died within a few days of each other from food poisoning caused by spoiled fish. The rights to the throne of Jerusalem passed to her eldest daughter from her 2nd marriage. However, Maria of Montferrat did not live long. She died from childbirth fever. The line of this young woman, Isabella's lineage, came to an end when the last direct descendant was executed by the cruel Charles of Anjou. But that is a story for another time. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, and thank you for your comments.